Welcome to the Problem Properties podcast. I am your host, Kathryn Vere, and every week we delve into the problems that properties have that are slightly less visible than the ordinary. So here we investigate any psychic activity that may be going on, any emotional imprints from previous owners that might still be layered into the walls and adding layers of toxicity to what you're living in. Or it might be that you have a property that cannot sell for love nor money nor any amount of refurbishing that you're doing. Whatever your problem is with your property, if you think that there might be something slightly under the bonnet going on that you are interested in finding out about, we look into and explore and are detectives on the more intuitive levels about what is going on and finding out the logical causes and being able to shift them for you.
Welcome to the Problem Properties podcast. My name is Tania Costantini Zimmermann, and today I hijacked this podcast from Kathryn Vere because I thought you would like to get to know her a little bit better. So I'm gonna be the one asking the questions today. So Kathryn, welcome to your podcast.
Thank you very much, Tanya.
So let's dive straight in. I'm sure people are very curious to find out who are the people who usually come to you.
So it's a wide range of people that come to me. You know, I've recently had quite people who are high performance entrepreneurs who are starting to wake up and realize that it's it's more than just buying more supplements and changing their mindset and doing their somatic healing work. If they're able to do that, that actually if they've done all of those things and there's still something missing, to actually look at their living spaces and their working spaces. And I think, since COVID, and a lot of people are now working online and they're working at home, and their energy has slumped, and they probably haven't noticed, but they're living and working in the same emotional signature and frequency, and that's not necessarily the most conducive to high performance. And what they're starting to realize, these wonderful clients are starting to realize, is that they can actually let go of the more negative. They can be released. The more negative, disruptive energies can be released that are holding them down and holding them back. And then really high performing energies can come into the home and the working space so that they can really elevate their performance, and they can really be much more focused and much sharper, much more switched on to be able to do the work that they're here to do, but also to come across in that real sense of clarity and alignment and strength and being energized by their home rather than de-energized by their home. So I have a lot of high performance people coming in. I have a lot of people who, and I love working with people who've got a mission, who've got a purpose, but they just can't, they're having to sleep all the time. Their energy feels so low, and they don't know what to do about it. They've tried everything. I've been to the doctor, they've been to the gym, they've been to the healer, and when they come home, they just feel this heaviness, or they just cannot get clarity around their work. Their motivation is completely gone. Doesn't matter how hard they try or how hard they push. So those sort of people I love to work with. But there's also people who move into a new home and then suddenly get ill, or their dog gets ill or something like that, and they know that it happened when they moved in, so they know that they need to get the place cleared, and then they can just sort of carry on with their normal life. There's a wide range of people, and I work all around the world, Tanya. I've got clients in Australia, America, Canada, Spain, Tenerife, Cyprus, Italy. It doesn't matter where people are, it works just the same. And much as I love to go and do on-site stuff, and people can definitely pay for me to go off to Azerbaijan or Poland or wherever, or India, to do some work, it works just as effectively working online. So it's a wide variety of people. It's people who are starting to wonder maybe there is this missing piece of this puzzle here that I need to look at. I know there's something off here. I know there's something not right in where I live. Why do I feel like I need to move? Why do I feel like I have to keep rearranging the furniture or buying new furniture or redecorating the house? That type of thing. And I also have property developers who, consistently have tenants that cause disruption or tenants that leave and don't pay, or they're trying to buy a house and endless problems with trying to buy it. It takes months and months. There's always something going wrong, something going wrong. They don't know why, or they can't sell a property for love nor money, and they know there's something going on there, or they've got a property and they've got really ill in it, got this situation going on, and but they don't want to sell it because it's like a family property. But they don't really, they're stuck in this sort of no person's land of what do I do with it? I can't sell it because it's family property, but I can't live in it. And so there are many, many situations where this work can help to look at energetically what is going on under the bonnet, the more invisible stuff, and see, and it's so clear, where it's a contractual thing or past people living there or fighting over a property, or so many things could be going on there. And once those things come to light and they're seen, and they're always very specific, Tanya, they're always very logical, very specific. There's nothing, really woo-woo about this. This is really like, this comes because of that happened with your father, and that happened because the previous tenants were fighting over this, and it's very specific. Once it's very specific, then it can be brought into that conscious awareness, and then it can be cleared energetically, which is the part that I can do. And once it's cleared, people just feel that relief and their bodies relax, and the place feels lighter. And then you can hear the sound of words when people speak. You can even hear the sound, the vocal words. It's just incredible. Suddenly becomes crystal clear, and your ears open up, and the voices open up, and you think, wow. And I also do before and after photos, which when I remember, like before I do a clearing, I take a picture of someone's face, and then I take a picture afterwards, and you can see the eyes are just so sort of clear and wide, and the face is relaxed, the jawline's relaxed, everything in the face is relaxed, and the shoulders are relaxed, the person's opened up, they've got this connection with their heart. So I'm getting this kind of rogues gallery going now with before and after pictures, because again, that shows people, they look at it and they're like, oh, wow, because they didn't realize how tense they were before, how tight they were trying to live in that kind of environment, in that kind of energetic fog. So there's lots of different people I work with, people who are really wanting to increase their energy by doing the personal development, by going to these personal development courses and business courses and healing, and they expand their awareness and they clear their mindset and they do all this stuff, but then they go home and they're in this new energetic identity, this new frequency. They go home, but the house that they're living in and the place that they're working in do not match their new frequency. So guess what happens? It's the frequency that has the strongest power, which has been there the longest, which is the home environment, that wins. So you could go and do your therapy, do your counseling, and I'm sure you know plenty of people who do this kind of thing. And then they go home, and it's like that all fizzles away. It all dissolves, it all evaporates, because the energetic signature and blueprint and frequency in that space is so much lower than where they've gone to. So they get sabotaged and they get drained and they get sucked back down into that. So it's absolutely essential that you actually, if you want to do something in this world and you're driven and you're called to do something in this world, you absolutely have to get your environment, your working environment, your living environment into shape.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'm a bit cheeky, right? So I want to have a little bit more details if you're willing to share. So how does that process go? Is that then if we decide to work together, Is it a couple of hours? Is it a week? How much time does it usually take you?
That's a great question. Thank you so much for that. Yes, so how the process works is, if you want to go ahead and work with me, I send you a very personalized questionnaire. And this is a crucial part of the process. And I give it to people for 2 weeks. The reason for that is you need time to reflect on these questions and contemplate them. So I ask you the size of the property, how long you've been there, what you feel, what's your relationship with the property, what you feel in the different rooms, how things have changed over time, whether there are, practical things going on, like leaking roofs or infestation of flies or mice, or, is the roof always leaking, or have you got rising damp? Have you got, walls that keep coming down? Have you got windows that leak? I mean, there's a lot of practical things that people have they don't necessarily realize are important within this. I mention that because I recently dealt with a property that had a 10-year infestation of flies all year round. Not just in the summer, all year round, always in there, even when the windows were closed, always flies, flies, flies. And once I cleared that property, the flies disappeared. So I'm just saying that because it's not just invisible stuff that shifts in your relationships and your body and your health and your relationships and your work, but it's also very specific practical things. Like if you've got some awful neighbor who's always shouting at you or something, the neighbor will suddenly leave or suddenly get well or suddenly stop shouting. I mean, the dogs change once the trauma's released. They suddenly go to sleep and they're zonked out and they're happy. So this is how you can see these sorts of effects on people and on animals and on the surrounding areas so there's this questionnaire which is all around your relationship with your home, and your emotions about your home and your thoughts about your home and what's been going on, and who owned the home before, what's going on in the area. There's quite a lot in it, which people have told me is so fascinating because they've never stopped to think about these things. So that's why I give them time, because over a period of time, more things come through. When you start thinking about things, you start noticing all these, oh my God, I hadn't realized. Yes, I've got that going on. And why does that happen? And so people start putting all those things down. Yeah, I always get someone in to fix the central heating, but it never gets fixed. It's always a problem. There's always this noise, and I don't know where it's coming from. So starting to bring all those things into conscious awareness. Some people send me pages and pages and pages of notes, right? And they get really engaged in the process and involved and realize, start to realize how much these things are impacting them, how many things have been impacting them. And they just sort of pushed out of the awareness because they've never spent time thinking about them. God, I feel really scared in this house, or this house is really lonely. Isn't that weird? That I didn't realize that. Or this room feels really neglected. It's full of Christmas decorations, and so lots of things that you sort of maybe half aware of. We bring all of that into conscious awareness. So that happens for around 2 weeks. Then we arrange the clearing itself, which can be on site and it can be remote. So if it's remote, it's a question of doing it through Zoom as we're talking now, or it could be on a phone. So some way of having that link, because people have to be able to walk around the area as well as the house. It can take up to 3.5 hours is the most that a clearing's taken. It can be less, but there is so much involved in this. So yeah, people have to need to leave up to like 3.5 hours in time for the clearing to happen, because we're going to bring all this stuff into awareness, then we're going to clear it, and then we're going to bring in these sort of protective energies around the property, and then uplift with the very uplifting, life enhancing energies. So all of that happens. And then after that, I do aftercare calls because I want to know how it's integrating. I want to know what people are noticing, what changes are they noticing, how is their life changing, having done that work. And for people that are very sort of able, aware, and switched on, a lot of stuff can happen there and then. But if you've got like an elderly person in the house or a disabled person, or you've got a lot of people coming and going, I could set the energy to happen more slowly. So they're not necessarily going to feel a massive impact straight away, because that might disrupt somebody that's not consciously aware enough to be able to cope with that. I don't want that to happen to people. So then the energy might happen more slowly over a period of time. So there's there's two aftercare calls afterwards to check how it's integrating, what people are noticing, and what they want to celebrate and what they're enjoying about, where they are now. So in total, the process takes about a month.
So, Kathryn, you've covered a lot of different layers and things within the properties, but could you go a little bit more into detail about the layers and the components of what you do and how we could imagine that that looks like?
Absolutely. So the main areas of work that I do, which I feel are like the most urgent things that need to be done in properties when there are problems, fall into two categories. There is the emotional imprints and there is the psychic activity. And so when I go into a property, I will be looking, and I don't just look at that property. I look at the whole environment, so around the property. So there's the land, and there's also, like if there's a garden, if there's a garage, if there's a loft. I look at the neighbors sometimes, there's things in the streets or up the road or in that area. For example, in areas in the UK where a lot of bombs have been dropped in the Second World War, that can affect you. The shock impact of that doesn't just affect the houses that were that were destroyed, but it can affect the shock waves can be affecting houses in the streets along where we're, and the emotional shock as well. So there's trauma that's gone into there's trauma that's gone into the land, and there's trauma that's gone into buildings, and that has also reverberated out over quite a wide area, I find, when I start working. So when I work on somebody's house, I'm not just working on their house, I'm working on what happened in the land under the house, what happened to the houses beside the house, opposite the house, what happened on the land before that. And not everything, but just the relevant aspects come through. So where there has been trauma on the land, where, for example, there's been war, there's been fighting, there's been a bomb dropped, the land has been, maybe a building has from the past there, for example, where there was like a poorhouse or an orphanage or something like that, or a prison that was built there, and then that's been taken down and a new housing estate has been built, and the people who buy the houses don't realize what was happening on the land before. That can be having an awfully powerful negative impact on people's health and their relationships. I've known houses where couples always separate, for example, but when couples buy a house, they don't find out, what was the history of the families that happened before, but that pattern is in the house. So it's an understanding that it's not just seeing the building in isolation, but seeing the building in its whole environment. And again, I'm not looking at every single house. I'm told exactly. For example, I did one clearing 2 days ago. We were standing outside the lady's house in Wales, and I was just told, because I'm guided, right, Tania, we need to go down the hill to the third house on the right. So that's where we went, right? So we didn't go to the first house or the second house. We only went to the third house. And that's where there was a whole lot of stuff going on. And then it was corroborated so amazingly by the sign that was outside the house afterwards and all sorts of things. So it becomes really, really fascinating. So it's like really pinpointing very specific things that are affecting your house, your well-being, and your health. And that could come from anywhere. Because after that one, we went down the street. We then had to go right up the street to near where the church was, and there was a hall there where there had been a lot of very disruptive meetings and things that had gone on, and a lot of issues between the Welsh and the English. Now, I'm just told about these things, right? But they were having an impact on this woman's house further down the street. So it could be anything. And that's why I'm very open and I'm very trusting. And I literally go, right, where are we going next? And it's often surprising to them, the clients, and it's often surprising to the people where we actually have to go. So we look at buildings, and it could be in the street, it could be the buildings in the area, the land, it could be the animals. The animals are very, very deeply affected by this work. If there are any animals, we've had situations where animals have been so grateful, there's sudden relief when those energies are moved, and they're just like, oh, we can breathe again. And it's beautiful to see animals. Suddenly the birds start singing and things like that once you've cleared a space. So it's all the environment around that I look at, and it's very specific. It's not everything. It's just wherever there is a disruptive or unsettling element that is affecting that particular house. And of course, it clears it for those people as well. So it has a wider impact than just clearing one person's house. So there's all the land and the environment around, and the trauma that's happened there, and we clear all of that energetically so that it's not affecting the house anymore. And then there are the emotional elements of either unexpressed emotions that the people currently living in the house are sitting on and suppressing, perhaps a heartbreak or a grief or a loss that they haven't fully grieved. And that can be a heavy feeling in the property. Or it could be that a piece has been built onto the property but hasn't been fully integrated into the property. So it feels very strange and disconnected. And that can give people in the property a feeling of disconnection from themselves and from each other. If a property, if an extension isn't energetically attached properly into the building. So I'm just giving you some examples of how emotional imprints from current people. I mean, it is only recently we all started to be able to express our feelings. In the past, it was really our parents and grandparents, not the done thing to express things. So it came out in behavior, in violent behavior, and in addictions, in alcoholism, and things like that. And a lot of conflict and violence that was repressed energy coming out, and all of that. If you imagine that's all going into the space, whether it's overexpressed, badly expressed, or unexpressed, and the women that are holding on to all that energy and too scared to say anything and being abused, that can be read layered into the walls as well, into the spaces as well. And that all needs to be cleared. All that historical drama and trauma and all those stories, they're all there. And some of us can hear those stories, and of course there's good stories as well, right? But my work is to clear the not so good stories. So that's why I talk about that stuff, because people are enjoying the good bits about the house. They could love certain parts about the house, and that's fine, but that is not the problem. This is the Problem Properties podcast, right? We're dealing with the problem. So that's what I'm tuned into as a kind of like problem properties detective, intuitive detective even. I tune into those stories and I can hear them and release them. So there's all the energetics of the current occupants and the previous occupants, and then the previous occupants on the land, or even animals that were on the land before. So there's all of those emotional elements and stories and dramas and traumas. And then there are often psychic activity as well. So you've then got the emotional traumas and dramas and stories of the previous occupants who we had a woman recently, in spirit, who'd died by falling down the stairs. So people who died very suddenly, and they're so shocked that they don't move on, and we call them the earthbound souls. And the earthbound souls are there, and they're often causing disruption, either in health or sapping people's energy terribly. They can be causing they can make people so ill, and they can cause so much disruption in relationships. They can take away people's peace of mind, can infect people with their thoughts and with their feelings because they're wanting to be seen and known and heard, so that they can find their way out. They want to find their way out. Now, I've had many situations over the years where people have said to me, "Oh, it's just a friendly ghost. You know, we call him this or we call her that, and it's not a problem. We don't have a problem with it." And I feel like saying to people, in fact, I do say to people, China, I said, "Well, hang on a minute, but you might be okay about them being there, but the fact that you're aware that they're there, do you think they want to be there?" And that's a completely usually new thought for people, to think, "Oh, I hadn't thought whether this ghost was still happy to be here, this earthbound spirit wanted to be here." And of course, they don't want to be here. They want to be able to understand and let go. And just like we need to process things, just like living human beings need to process things, they need to release their trauma, they need to find resolution, they need to go through a healing process. In exactly the same way, earthbound spirits need to go through a process, a healing process, a letting go process, a self-validating process, so that they can then find their way out of being, affecting people who are living now, and find their way onto other layers and dimensions where they can be happy and fulfilled, and where they need to be, because obviously don't they're causing disruption because they don't need to be here. So there's all sorts of layers of psychic activity which can have an absolutely devastating effect on people. I've had people that just think they have ADHD, but actually it's because they've got spirits in there that are constantly distracting them and pushing them around. They're so used to that kind of energy, they think it's their energy. Not saying it's all that, but sometimes it's that kind of thing. Or people who've got such low energy and they keep trying to pep themselves up, and they've got low energy because they're literally being drained by these very, very needy, demanding earthbound souls. And there can be not just one, there can be a whole family of them. Recently, I had to deal with a family, 3 generations, 12 of them, 12 earthbound souls, one at the front, the woman at the front with her family and her grandchildren behind, in a small flat. And this woman, nothing she could do to get a relationship off the ground, or to get her work sorted, or get proper income happening. And it wasn't surprising, because the whole place felt so heavy, so much full of like fog. And she was trying to live and sleep and work in this fog, but of course she didn't realize it because it was invisible. So, in essence, to answer your question, there's environmental elements that I look at around the building. There's emotional layers in the building from current owners and their relationships and their health issues, and what they're expressing or not expressing, or what's happened to them. And then there's all the emotional layers and stories from the past people who've lived on the land. Then there's all the psychic activity that's gone on, not always present, but often there are some psychic elements which, again, not necessarily always come from the house. You can come from somebody that's psychically attacking you from across the road. I've had that one once. So you could be under some kind of psychic attack, and it could have nothing to do with you, but something to do with somebody else, but you're still suffering from that, or not being able to sleep from that. So that's, in essence, is a sort of overview of the main elements that I so far have come into awareness for me to deal with, to clear, to cleanse, and then protect those spaces.
Wow, truly fascinating. I've never heard it put like that. And you go into so much depth. Amazing. Truly, truly amazing. I'm sure people are very curious to find out, who are you behind the scenes, and how did you end up doing this fascinating work? Tell us a bit about your story and yourself.
Thank you. So Well, I'm Kathryn, for those of people listening that don't know me. I had a very different kind of upbringing. I was brought up in a Victorian vicarage that had 24 mostly massive rooms, and that was very strongly haunted with a number of earthbound spirits. But of course, as a child, I had no real reference point for what earthbound spirits were. So I just got used to hearing people wandering up and down stairs, windows rattling when there was no wind, and taps running in the bathroom. And then as time, when there was no water, I'd rush into the bathroom and check the bath, and it was dry. So it was there was lots of very strange psychic activity going on, and no way that I had of understanding it. And as I got older, I used to start these earthbound spirits started communicating with me and disrupting me. And for many years, I was a complete insomniac because I couldn't sleep. They kept me awake all night. And I thought it was me. I'd go to school, and I would hear, kids would go, "Oh, there's no such thing as ghosts." And the way that ghosts are presented on television and in films and things, they're either kind of these really horrible, scary big things like Ghostbusters have to be exterminated, or they're just so unimportant and amorphous. You can just sort of waft them away with sage, or you can do some drumming, or you can say some prayers, and they're going to go. And it's really, but really, Sunny, it is not that simple. It's not that simple at all. All these earthbound souls, as I discovered, have stories. They have reasons that they are still earthbound, right? They're not here because they want to be here. So if they're making a lot of noise and disruption, it's because they want to get attention. And so I was immersed in all of this at a very, very young age. And some of the benefits of that were that I got very discerning about the inner world and the difference between our psychic elements and external elements, and how houses can hold all these stories and these emotional residues, as well as earthbound souls from the past. I mean, not every house has earthbound souls, right? But sometimes it could be, from houses next door. So I was immersed in this from a very young age. And as I grew up, I wanted to be normal, and I wanted to have a normal life. But I was always very, very outward focused. So I was always working in the voluntary sector. I ran telephone helplines, and I was always helping people. I was brought up as a vicar's daughter, right? So there was always people at the door, coming to the door, needing help, needing to be listened to. And as a young person, I didn't think I had the skills. I didn't have the resources to know how to deal with all these people that kept coming with all their needs and problems. And I didn't know how to deal with all the psychic activity and that was going on in the house either. But because it had all happened to me, I think there was a deep sense within me about how can I find out how to deal with these things. And so I made it my business to find out, to build those skills, and to build the resources, and to find out, was I really mad or whatever. But I knew I wasn't mad, because all the stories, all the things that happened to me were completely corroborated. I had the names of these earthbound spirits. They were actually people who'd lived in the house before, who'd died in the house before. And so I knew that it was true, but I didn't know how to deal with them. I thought I just had to suffer them, Tania. I thought I had to suffer. They were suffering, and of course it took me many, many years to work out that I could communicate with them. Not just communicate with them, but give them a chance to tell their story, and give them a chance to say what they needed to say in order to be resolved from whatever that lifetime was that they got stuck in, or that belief they got stuck in. So it might be like they felt really, really bad and about something they'd done, and they needed someone to forgive them before they could move on. Or they one very, very tragic one I had recently was an earthbound spirit who felt she didn't deserve to go to heaven. And so she was staying there because she didn't feel that she had a right to go. So it's about validating her life, listening to her life, and hearing her and letting her know that she was important and her life was important. And then she could move on, right? So it's been a very long, subtle process over many, many decades of learning that what I'm being told in these very subtle way, this very subtle language of either houses speaking to me, earthbound spirits speaking to me, or picking up on conflicts from the past, residues from the past, griefs that are still stuck in spaces, stagnant energies of depression or thoughts of suicide, a lot of existential doubt and things that people think are theirs, and then you find out that actually people's thoughts and feelings, like you've hijacked my podcast, those thoughts and feelings they've been hijacked by the emotional patterns that are still alive and full of charge in the room, in the spaces, from previous occupants, or even their own feelings that they haven't fully expressed or repressed, they've repressed. So as I grew older, my 20s, I trained in counseling and psychotherapy, and I started exploring all sorts of different alternative religions, healing modalities, and I built up a whole sort of sense of a whole combination of all those things added to my natural sensitivity and awareness. And so I'm now in my 7th decade of life, Tania, and I've been working and filtering through all these things into a real deep understanding about the trauma that bodies can hold, but also in the bigger picture, the trauma that properties and homes and spaces and even land and even streets, can hold, that affect people when they walk up the streets or when they get home and they open a door. There may be things in that doorway that are affecting everybody coming in and out. And if you are aware enough, you can pick up on those things. I think some people do, Tony, some people do pick up on those things. They go into a space and they get the goosebumps, or they feel it cold, or they feel, oh, there's something going on here. But then they just live with it, ignore it, walk out of it, comment on it, don't comment on it. Because most people, even if they can pick up on it, they don't know how to deal with it. But because of my early life experiences, I really needed to learn how to deal with these things. And I made it my mission to work out how I could deal with these things, because after all, they were happening to me, and very few people have that kind of experience when they're growing up that's so persistent through all those years. So I worked out how to do it. I've worked out how to listen to these things. I've worked out how to hear these things. I've worked out how to deal with the trauma, not only in human bodies and minds, but also the trauma that's in properties, that's in walls. And this can come from the architects who had who had loads of different intentions or didn't enjoy what they were doing, and so they've put as kind of a negative spin into the way that the property was built. Or it could be the planners, Tanya, who really who wouldn't let it be built in the way they wanted it to be built, or who put various restrictions on it. It could be from the neighbors. It could be from so many things. The builders themselves. Sometimes I've had walls where the builders have been the bricklayers have been in so much frustration, they haven't been paid enough. There's always a story there. So it could be they weren't paid enough, or they didn't get on, or somehow, there was some miscommunication or some greed that happened over the contract. Somebody missed out massively financially. All those layers, those things kind of layer into the walls, layer into the spaces. Then you or I might go along and want to rent a space or buy a space or a house, and we walk straight into this, and we don't realize, because we're not used to understanding these things, how much of the history of the past, emotionally, psychically, spiritually, and even practically, can be layered into those walls. So it's been a really long journey, very interesting journey, quite difficult as well. You can imagine, in a world of people where people don't tend to talk about these things very much. Even in healing circles, people don't seem to talk about these things very much. And they can have such an impact on our health, our relationships, our productivity, our purpose, and our performance. And the extraordinary missing piece in terms of our performance that people don't tend to even consider, let alone get ready to think, how can I deal with this? How can I find out if this is me or if this is actually something that belongs to somebody else that's sitting in this space?
Amazing, fascinating, and especially what you just said about the performance. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
So one of the things I've really come to understand is that when it comes to performance, people tend to think about their blood pressure, their diet, their nutrition, their exercise, their fitness, getting up early in the morning, doing meditation, reading all those really empowering personal development books. There are so many things you can build into your routine, drinking water, um, and meditating and doing, recovery and massage and really looking after yourself and getting yourself focused and everything else. But what if you can do all of those things and then find that you still have very low energy? You're still not sleeping well. You realize your performance is not where you want it to be or where it has been before. And one of the things that you might not be considering is if you moved recently and suddenly your energy has gone down or your performance gone down, your motivation's gone down, you start eating crap food, you start not looking after yourself, your sleep goes out of whack. Maybe it's something to do with the actual move in your house or the office space that you're working in. And this can also work if, it can also happen slowly. This can happen slowly where you are, gradually being exposed over a period of time to these emotional imprints from the past, to all these things that haven't been resolved that are sitting in that space that are unconsciously mostly affecting you and you don't realize, but you're constantly being sabotaged and undermined in your performance efforts by all this invisible stuff that's going on that very, very few people are talking about. And if they are aware of it, do they know how to clear it? Do they know how to sort it out? Or do they just go, oh, well, I better move then. I better go to a different office. That tends to be the external thing. Or we'll deal with the external symptoms. We'll push harder. Let's push harder with our performance. We'll do more. We'll push harder. We'll invest in more green juice. People look outside themselves and they're keeping a fantastic market going for all these performance products. And we're like, buy more, get more, try more, ingest more, more exercise, more. But what if you're doing more? You're doing all those things and you're actually not getting anywhere. You still know that your performance is nothing like it was, nothing like you want it to be. Then you've got a real problem, right? You've got to start looking at yourself. And then people might say, right, it's my mindset. I work on my mindset. And even if they get as far as saying, perhaps it's trauma from the past, let's deal with the trauma from the past, early life trauma, ancestral trauma, intergenerational trauma, even past life trauma for those of people that are open to that dimension of possibilities. But who imagines and thinks that there might be stuff layered into the actual living and working spaces that they are operating in or attempting to operate in, and noticing whether, well, when I work in this space, I feel like this. When I go out, I feel like that. When I work in that working space, I feel completely different. So guess what? There must be something different going on in my different living spaces and working spaces, right? And this is actually a very little known but crucial link between your performance and your property. And I really feel this is important for people to start to try and understand and investigate, how much is the building that I am sitting in affecting my performance. Because for people that really care about their performance and are here with a mission, with a purpose, if they're constantly being undermined and sabotaged by something external, by something that's been left behind, imprints that have been left behind by other people, then it's absolutely time to say, this has got to stop. We need to shift this. We need to change it. I need this building to support my highest performance. And that is then when you take the step beyond, when you say, yes, let's clear and release all the disruptive historical elements, patterns, energies from the past and from people that have laid them into the building. Then guess what we can do? We can bring in life enhancing, performance topping energies, which are going to lift people up. And then the space that you're living in provides that energetic reality, that energetic signature, structure, and frequency that can support you to move into your really best performance without those distractions, without those sabotaging elements. Sometimes you might not even realize that you're living in that fog of past stuff. But my God, you can feel the difference when it's cleared and you have that clarity of mind and your body's relaxed and you're totally on it, 100% on it. And then you can produce your best work and you can bring that out into the world. But you need help to be able to do that because most people cannot do that for themselves. So the link between property and performance is profound and it is crucial and it is something that is just so important. So anyone listening that this resonates with, I really invite you. I've got my email address at the end of the podcast here. Send me an email. I want better performance. Just bang me a message out and you can make a time to have a chat with me and I can tap into your living spaces and working spaces and we can talk about the difference that it might make to you to have all of that fog, all of those distractions, all of that stuff from other people released, cleared, cleansed, and then all that energy turned around so that you can be supported and living in your best ever space.
Amazing, amazing. And I'm sure there's some people out there listening to this going, okay, I want to work with you. What do I have to do? How do I go about it? Tell us.
Okay, so my email address is below here. So you can just contact me at the problem properties podcast at gmail.com. And you can, and then you can book a time to have a call with me. You can tell me what you've been struggling with, what you've been noticing. And I can talk to you about the impact and the difference that this work could make to you and your life and your purpose and your performance.
Incredible. Again, so thorough and so in depth. Amazing. So, Kathryn, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today. Thank you for everybody who listened, and see you on the next episode of the Problem Properties podcast when Kathryn is back to being the host. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you so much for hijacking the podcast
My
today,
pleasure.
Tania. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.